Sure. We do have kind of a long one, at least by schedule. We try to keep things moving along as best we can. And thanks to anybody who helps me do that. The first item on the agenda is a check-in with Sullivan and Powers. And it's like Rick is on Zoom to go over our FY 2025 financial audit report. So with that, hopefully everybody saw the financial report or audit information and reporting in the share drive that was posted to the meeting folder. And
Yes.
had an opportunity to go through it. Rick, if I remember correctly, it is a lot of pretty heady information. So I will turn it over to your usual, very efficient summary of those findings.
You got it. No problem. So yeah, thanks for having me here tonight. I'm here to present the fiscal year 25 audit. Like we were talking about, there's a lot in this report, a lot of pages. I'm going to kind of give you a quick overview of what I think the key elements are. And if there are any questions at the end, we can just go on to that. So like I said, a lot of information here, 44 pages of stuff related to the financials, footnotes, etc. But my focus is really pages 1 through 4, which is the auditor's opinion. If you're looking at pages 1 through 4, on page 3, you'll see in the top paragraph where we're very clearly identifying that this financial statement is the responsibility of management. There's a lot that goes in this throughout the year, from setting policies, posting transactions, payroll, all the different things that goes into the accounting system, and that builds to this report for the year. So that responsibility falls with management. My job as your auditor is to come in and review the numbers and and issue an opinion on whether these financial statements are fairly stated. So when we're giving an opinion, we have 3 choices. You can give an adverse opinion, means these financial statements are not fairly stated. There's a qualified opinion, meaning they're fairly stated except for something. And then there's an unqualified opinion. This particular year, and I think the last couple of years or few years with the town, we've had one little a qualification related to the cemetery fund, related to the investments being shown at market rather than cost, which they're supposed to be showed at cost if you're under the cash basis or modified cash basis. But obviously, we're showing them at the market, which probably is more useful, but it does lead to an opinion qualification for that. But that alone is pretty much the only qualification. Everything else was unqualified. The general fund, all the major funds other than cemetery. Kind of skipping over. So we start going on page 7. So page 7 is basically your balance sheet. It's a snapshot in time of your assets and your liabilities at 6/30/25, showing all your cash investments, your amounts due to the state, due to other funds. And so it takes a snapshot, like I said, takes your assets minus your liabilities. We'll go down to the bottom section, which is your fund balances. And you can see like the general fund sitting at the end of the year with a fund balance of $469,380, which I think is up about $120,000. Last year was $343,871. So that appears to be very healthy. Kind of looking the rest of your funds, you got the highway fund, which usually zeroes itself out. I think there was a small transfer in from the general fund at the end of the year to zero it out. You got the highway equipment fund, which is which has gone up about 69,000. The big one that I wanted to point out on the major funds is the FEMA fund. You'll see people get confused by it. You'll see a deficit in the FEMA fund of 204,602. Last year, that deficit was like 772,000. It all relates to the timing of when the grant payments come in the door. And I think at 6/30/25, you were still waiting for some grant money to come in the door. I'm not sure if it's coming yet to clear out that deficit, but when that money comes in, that should clear out that deficit. When you're looking at this page 7, the last column called the non-major funds, That is a total of all the other funds. If you look, and we'll get to it in a few minutes, but there's pages 37 and 42. There are all the other funds, whether it's reappraisal, trails, town hall, um, all the technology fund, all those funds are accounted for in the back in schedules, and they roll forward to this line item here called the non-major funds. Again, the next page, same thing. You're basically looking at the revenues, expenses of all the different major funds and how they got to the fund balances at the year end. And as we talked about the general fund, healthy fund balance there, you got a lot of in your FEMA money, a lot of your money back. 827,000 came in, and very minimal expenses for this year. But it looks like you're slowly clearing up that deficit in that fund. And all the other funds look like they're building some of the reserves, and we'll get into those, like I said, in a little bit. So if you're looking at pages 11 through 29, and I'm not going to go through these, but these are what we call the notes to the financial statements. So if you're looking for a deeper dive into what cash is insured, what are our investments, what are our fund balances, and what can they be used for, what are our debt terms, these footnotes to the financials will give you a much deeper dive into those kinds of questions and additional information you may want or need at any point in time. So just know that those are there. If you're looking for something specific that relates to the financial, there's a good chance it's in the footnotes here. Page 30 through 34, that's your budget actual for the year for the general fund. You've probably seen this many times throughout the year in the reports from the treasurer. Again, I don't think these numbers have changed or strayed too much from where you've seen them all along. I don't think there were too many audit adjustments that would have affected them. So those should look fairly similar to what you've seen towards the end of the year. Same kind of thing on page 35 and 36. This is your budget and actual for the highway fund. So again, shows all the ins and outs, shows, the grant revenues, which weren't budgeted for, which puts your revenues over by about 130,000. Most of that's over because you're, again, the grant funds weren't budgeted for and usually can't be budgeted for because you don't know what's coming in or not. So like I said, on pages 37 and 38, you're going to start seeing what we call the special revenue funds and the capital project funds. Same thing. These are all the different funds for like I said, if you're looking over at page 39, you'll see the reappraisal fund, conservation fund. So again, if you're looking for the assets and liabilities, all these are where the fund balance for all these different funds sit. Nothing stuck out to me, no big negatives that had to be dealt with or discussed. But again, most of these are just building reserves or accounting for grants or activity within separate funds. And again, the next schedule is 41 and 42. Those are same kind of thing, balance sheet and income statement for your capital project funds. So again, if you're looking for any of the balances, then that's where you'd find those. We are required as part of our audit report to the board to discuss if we have any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies that were noted during the course of our audit. We did not identify any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses that needed to be reported to the board. And I like to congratulate the staff there for getting that, because that's not always the case with many of the audits I do. But it's nice to report that there were no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies during the course of our testing. We have issued a management letter with some recommendations. Again, these aren't required communications, but they're things about talking about your internal control system, updating some policies, several other different kinds of things that you can look through. And if you have any questions or further clarification, you can let me know. So other required communications, we encountered no difficulties in dealing with management staff during the course of the audit. We had no disagreements with staff or management during the course of the audit. There were no consultations with other auditors, and all entries that we proposed were posted by management. So overall, I thought the audit went really well and successful, and I want to thank everybody there for the time and effort that they gave us to get this thing done, and to you as soon as we could. So I don't know if anybody has any specific questions.
Well, yeah, one, does anybody else have questions that they'd like to raise about the report? Rick, I did, and then maybe I was just reading kind of the preamble into the report incorrectly, but it sounded like Calais is using the cash basis form of accounting that is a departure from kind of a accrual, accrual, or what would be a normal standard. I guess I'm assuming that accrual is the standard that folks would prefer to see, I guess.
Well, I guess it depends on your point of view. I mean, I have a lot of small towns that use what we call the modified cash basis. But
Okay.
it gets into the points where if you start looking at large governments where you have to start booking pension disclosures, fixed assets, depreciation, there's a lot of stuff to that some people who are looking at the report may want to look at it, but not a lot of typical people who are looking at Vermont reports, whether it's the bond bank or anybody like that. They won't look at a modified cash basis much different than they'll look at a GAAP basis financial. They're still
Okay.
completely acceptable. The only thing that you deviate from is on the modified cash basis, supposed to show those investments at cost. You don't have them recorded at cost, you have them at market. But between you and me, that I would rather see them in market, because to me that's more accurate. But the standards say to be at cost. So I think taking the qualification is the right thing to do in this particular case. So
Okay. Great. Thanks for
yep.
expanding on that. I don't have any other questions. Kari, do you have any other questions, or?
I'm good.
No, you've
There
spent
was a
plenty of
healthy-
time with it, yeah.
There's a healthy list of recommendations there, and that'll be a good basis for a work plan once dust settles with budgeting and everything else.
So that was my question, in terms of the list of recommendations. Do you have any questions about them? Are they things that you'll consider and?
Oh, yeah, I mean, everything on that list is worth pursuing.
Yeah.
I haven't gone through and prioritized. I think some of the internal controls and policies will be the place where we start.
Okay, right, thanks.
Well, if there aren't any other questions or comments on the audit report, then I'd like to entertain a motion to accept the FY 2025 audit report as presented by Sullivan and Powers.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. All right. Thank you, Rick. And the next item up is.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is somewhat related. It's the internal controls checklist. So that was also posted in the shared drive. If everyone's had an opportunity to take a look at that part.
So if you haven't seen this before, it's an annual requirement that the municipalities look at this report generated by the financial person. And it just goes through some of the basic internal controls and gives you a little bit more information about how we handle things. The only change from last year's was we didn't make any changes to the signatories on our bank accounts the year before we had. But that's not really a concern. Yeah, so happy to answer any questions about that. And then you're supposed to receive this, I guess, is the actual term, and sign it and we put it on file.
Or just date that we've received it on the site.
We have received it. Yeah, and so, I mean, these are all for doing things in an ideal way. Are you feeling like we're all, I mean, the auditor has all this information also, right?
Yes,
And so.
and more.
They've, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would say they're verifying most of these things, and they're going into more detail I think one of the most significant pieces is that we have Nemrick do the bank reconciliation. So what your accounting system says doesn't always match what your bank account says, and monthly you need to reconcile that, and you figure things out as a result of that process. It's very good to have separate entities doing that, so that whoever is in charge of the financial statements is not adjusting things to their benefit. So, for example, when our bank sends out the monthly statements, they email them to both Nemrick and to myself.
Great, thank you.
I do think trying to close some of the loops on some of these, like the financial training for select board members. It may not have to be the entire select board, but it may be worth considering being a little more formal or structured about that, just to say that we're going to have two people who go through a more formal training for better financial literacy within the board. Starting to certainly get a better grasp on all of that just through years of paying attention to it and reviewing it. But
and that might be something we could ask VLCT to lead. We could maybe partner with another town or two,
sure,
to save on expense. But
yeah,
and we could schedule that for right after the new board year, say in March or something like that. If that was of interest,
that makes sense.
You want to put that on the to-do list?
Yeah,
look into that. Okay.
Is that not something that they would already do, the LCP?
Well, they have a general orientation, but maybe it might be more useful to do something that goes a little deeper.
I think so.
You already know the basics of financial reporting, like what else to look for, just questions that you have.
I wonder if that's something that we could with Woodbury or Worcester, and see if they'd be interested in committing to like more in-depth training for new members. In like the March or April timeframe.
Okay. Yeah, I would think having other boards there would be illuminating. Right?
Yeah, definitely. Great. Well, I don't have any other questions on that particular item. Is it a motion to acknowledge that we've received it and to date it? Probably not, because we're not accepting it. Let's just say a motion to accept the internal financial controls checklist that was presented by Kari. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you very much, Kari.
Yeah, thank you.
So that brings us then to the fiscal year 2027 budget planning, for which we have proposed budget request from the Washington County Sheriff's Department, as well as the General Highway Fund operating budget review and the discussion of next steps. We're kind of closing in on kind of the initial draft of the FY 27 budget. So those are all posted to the share drive. The first one up is a check-in with the Sheriff's Department. I don't think, do we have anybody here to talk about that? I don't think we do.
Ahead of schedule?
We're a little ahead of schedule.
Oh, yeah.
We're a little ahead because they're expected to come.
Oh, they are. Okay.
Yes.
Well, why don't we do the general and highway funds operating budget review?
So now that we've heard from most of the parties that relate to the general fund and highway fund, I put together a draft basically of what you've seen for requests. And we're standing at an 11.5% increase over the current year budget, $184,000. And 1% is equal to just under $18,000. So depending on where we want to end up, we have a fair amount of work to do to get there, I think. So key drivers. So within this, I just want to highlight medical insurance. Even though the premium rate is not going up by much, it's like a little over 1%. We have some new enrollees, which I reported last time. I'm anticipating. And so that, just that one line item, medical insurance is going up about $15,000. I mean, sorry, $24,000, 15%. Highway capital expense, we are in a cycle, you probably don't remember reviewing the capital budget, but we have 5 dump trucks, so at any one time, we might be paying for 2 or 3. So we're going to a year where we have 3 in the cycle. So that's a big driver. That's an increase of 66,000, that's estimated. Grant expense, we won't have the Kent Hill Road project, but we are looking at the Loose Road culvert. That's a grant that's been around for a while. I think it was delayed because of the flooding, maybe something else, I'm not sure, but we would need to match that and execute that project in the fall of next year in order to use that grant. And we also anticipated doing the Marshfield Road paving. So those two together are pretty significant increase, about 61,000 over the current year. And then road maintenance, vehicle maintenance, there's the conservation fund appropriation request. That's about 23,000. And then the other big one was the emergency management committee asked for an additional 11,000 for the local hazard mitigation planning grant. Now we're hoping we get some good news on a grant in December, which would take care of most of that. So, and then I want to point out that this does not include a match for the Bliss Pond Road culvert, which we got a grant that it will expire December next year, but it's, if I recall, it's like 80,000, something like that of our match. And so I didn't include it in here because I don't see where that offset would come from. And I haven't done anything in terms of an additional increase for the town administrator position, which was something we have talked about. We'll return to at some point. So happy to answer any questions, but also looking for how you want to proceed from here. I'm assuming you want to consider reductions, and I'm happy to come up with a list or a menu of options for next time, or you could identify places you want to start seeing savings now or something else.
Are we gonna hear about the emergency?
The local hazard mitigation planning
Yeah.
grant, yeah, December. We will know before we have to finalize this budget.
Okay.
I think by mid-December, if I remember.
So I'm wondering if, we have some big projects in the pipeline for next year, and then we have some capital expenses that have kind of like stacked up. And we also have a fund balance that generally carries over. And I think one of the ways that we could look at meaningfully reducing that increase would be to make some decisions around applying that fund balance to certain items, or if we can't get there for this particular year and we accept a certain amount of these increases, I'm wondering if some reserve funds to get created, because I noticed that I think we're getting a lot more organized in our capital planning, both on the projects and for the highway department, for example, and the equipment purchases, and making sure that we're trying to be on a rotating schedule of incurring those costs. I would think that theoretically we would also want to be regularly dumping into a reserve fund for some of those trucks that we are no longer making payments on, but will have to replace.
Yes.
And maybe get to a place where we're not needing to put ourselves in as much of a leveraged position, or have as much exposure to being leveraged for those capital, expenses.
Well, how I would put it is ideally we would get to a place where what we're putting in capital expense is always roughly the same.
That's right.
And if we don't have that much in payments due, we would be taking the difference and putting it into the reserve fund.
Mhm.
And then that, has a neutral impact on the budget each year and
Mhm.
we don't see these swings. That's not how it shook out this time. And I think that is largely a function of how it's arranged, that there's either these 2 or 3 dump trucks and we're going into a 3-year. But I take it you're saying we might look at using the highway capital equipment fund for, say, one of the payments
Mhm.
to reduce the budget.
I think so.
Makes some sense.
So to that end, I think that for the next time around, if it makes sense, probably to add fund balances to, as a column to this.
I think it's on there.
Is it?
But there, maybe not for the highway capital equipment fund, just because, it doesn't show up as something we're appropriating for, so.
Right.
Every other fund where there is an appropriation, I'm showing the balance. I don't.
Oh, I see.
But yeah, I'll certainly bring you that information.
How many years is the 2-truck, 3-truck cycle? Like, are we on 3-truck payments for the next 2 years, 4 years?
I think it's 2
No.
years.
Yeah, 2 years.
Yeah. It's actually a 4-truck cycle, because there's always a spare. So we're paying for 4 trucks in a 7-year rotation.
Yeah. The equipment is not as much of a conversation for me, I guess, as like some of the larger like construction projects. Like I think the paving and grant matches, paving in particular, because we have mileage that exceeds what we'd annually be getting. That I think sometimes puts us at a disadvantage for our kind of deferred maintenance strategy, or at least what has historically been our deferred maintenance strategy. And I think we're gonna have to make some decisions about drawing down the fund balance, I think, to pay for some of those things if we want to try to minimize, in my opinion. If we're gonna want to minimize the impacts to the budget and tax base. Theoretically, that's what the fund balance is for, I think it's discussed more as like kind of a rainy day fund, but at the same time,
Well, it's for purchases, right?
Well, it's also our buffer.
On buffer, our buffer for anything that could come up.
And
It came into play pretty significantly when we had the flooding expenses.
Yeah, and given the economic climate, I think you think pretty carefully about how much to draw it down.
Definitely, I am not advocating to draw it down, significantly, but I think in the next couple of years, we'll have to have some pretty significant conversations around what is the right amount. We've already started that conversation. And then
The fund balance policy.
Yeah, and do we have sufficient funds available for making specific allocations out of the fund balance? We do certainly for capital equipment, but I think we're gonna need them for everything. For town property management and rambling at this point, but do we want to dive into any other specific line items?
Well, Well,
on-
I guess,
on this?
I just would comment on the, what's not in there. It's also a variable that we would wanna. I guess I'm not remembering the Bliss Pond Road. Culvert grant expense, like, did we have it?
We actually,
We decided not to go forward with it?
no, we did not make that decision.
Okay.
We got a grant in the spring.
Right,
It's a structures grant. It's good for up to 200,000, but the cost estimate for the replacement was, I believe, 288.
uh-huh,
So we would need to come up with 88,000 to utilize that grant.
okay, and there's not a match.
There is a match. It's a 10%, I believe it's a 10% match, but the grant itself only goes up to $200,000. That's the maximum.
Right, I got you.
So we have to pay anything over 200,000. And
So you can
that,
put it in the budget, cause we don't have 88,000.
well, you know, I figured if I put it in there, you'd tell me to take it out.
Yeah.
I mean,
And you
that's-
estimated the match at 99. I mean, it's got a line item, but, what I'm seeing here, Bliss Pond cover on 282, line 282. Is estimated match 99,104.
oh, okay, that's the number with inflation built in, I think.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
I just,
I think I added 5% to everything for next year.
okay,
You know, I'd love to replace that. I mean, it washed out twice, right, 23 and 24, and really badly in 23. So it needs to be addressed at some point, but
mhm,
I mean,
And the loose road grant expires this next year too.
yeah, same date, December of 26. I actually don't know that much about that project, and maybe it would be good to have Toby or John speak to us about, you know, the relative importance of those projects.
uh-huh,
I just know that one's been in the pipeline for years now.
Okay, so we would like to know more about that.
Okay, yeah,
Looks like the sheriff's department's here.
it's an unmarked truck.
They've got new trucks. We're running incognito.
Well, in terms of are we discussing next steps, on budget at the moment, or we're waiting?
Well, we can, discuss next steps. I think Kari kind of, started to allude to them. There's, I guess, the opportunity for the next meeting, for Kari to go through, and note areas where there's more discretionary wiggle room, so that we have specific things, to look at. We have staffing dialogue to work through later in the agenda. Which will kind of inform that to a certain extent, but to me, I think that process worked well last year, where I identified areas where there's some more flexibility, and Beacon for that matter, on the general government side, but also on the highway department. And I guess it would make sense to go through those things during the next meeting.
sure. And
And then there's some,
the next meeting, we'll have the fire departments
yeah,
and the social service appropriation, so essentially have all the components, and you can look at. The entire budget in draft form,
yeah.
better picture.
And then I guess, something to keep in mind generally, we try to identify, target increase, I guess, or goal.
Yeah. Which is not 11%.
which is not allowed, which is not 11% and probably not 0%.
Okay.
So we can have some dialogue about that now, or we can save that until, next time. If anybody has any strong feelings about that. Strong feelings or opinions.
Okay. I mean, next time when we have more information, that'd be good.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, welcome, gentlemen. You're up for the hot seat. We've moved a little ahead on our financial planning, but you're the last item under our kind of fiscal 2027 budget conversation for this meeting at least, and we did receive your proposed budget and rate, so thank you for that, and welcome back as usual.
Thank you for having us.
Much appreciated. So usually you guys give us a little bit of a review on at least the last few months of activities and that sort of thing. You're welcome to do that, or we could just get into the meat of the to the
It's
proposal.
all up to you, but I did do the stats if you guys want.
Sure.
Yeah. Want me to start with big picture? Go for it.
Yeah.
So, our department continues to be stable as compared to some sheriff's offices. We are doing better than many. Well, not as well as some, due to,
Thank you very much.
mostly comes down to staffing. So it might be a big surprise, but nobody wants to be a cop anymore. With that being said, budgetary pressures statewide, especially in law enforcement, are pretty ugly these days. As you probably experienced with your own town budgets, the cost of employment, the cost of benefits, retirement. The wage pressures are skyrocketing, and we got particularly hit badly with insurance this year as well, health insurance and liability insurance. The county helps cover some of our liability insurance increases. But we've gotten hit really hard, workers' comp, everything else. So with that being said, our biggest challenge has come down to staffing, like I just said. We haven't grown at all this year, but we haven't lost anyone at all this year. With that being said, we were having a discussion today at the police academy I was teaching today about wages statewide. And I'll just give you one example. There's a local agency that is starting day one, zero experience at $38 an hour. There's another one down south that's at $42 an hour. Sorry, we can't compete with that. So with that being said, our rates are changing to cover our cost of doing business. We're ordering 2 cruisers here shortly. Each of them went up just under $9,000 each over the last 2 we ordered.
$124,000.
Yep. So we are trying to keep our rate increases moderate. We made a big jump a couple years ago because we were literally losing money, and made not as significant a jump last year, and this year is right in the neighborhood of just over 3%. Every year, we're gonna continue to do some kind of increase. The years of it continuing going by without an increase, that's probably never happening again, just because we have to make an increase every year. We'll look at the cost of doing business as it goes on, and hopefully we don't have to ever do a large jump like we did a couple years ago. But it really comes down to our staffing, attracting and keeping new people. We cannot compete with these agencies that are having these big starting dollars, but we are a family and we are not a union shop. So we have the advantage of, if somebody needs a day off, we're small enough and flexible enough that, okay, you can get a day off. Your wife's sick, your kid's sick. They need a last minute doctor's appointment. We have that flexibility. Nowhere else in law enforcement are you gonna get that. So we're using that as our big selling point for people with a family of come work for us because we can work with you. So with that being said, any questions about what I just gave before I turn it over to the captain?
No,
So.
No, thank you.
yeah,
For our statistics, big thing, as we have said before in other meetings, we're still seeing some high speeds. As you can see, there are 6 tickets there for what we call SL3 violations. So that's anything that's 21 or more miles in excess of the speed limit, or 31 miles in excess of the speed limit. Also, generally a 30 or more mile in excess of the speed limit usually has a neg op arrest added to it. I didn't add in the arrest stats. I know we had an arrest just last week over on Route 14 in Calais, but as you can see, the numbers are still there. They are concerning. that was part of the reason I did the budget the way I did it, and kind of gave you some guidelines on what my thoughts would be as far as during the summer, the spring, summer times, and then, what we should still be doing in the winter, because years ago, it was kind of once snow hit, things kind of slowed down a lot of places. That's not the way it is anymore. This is not slowing down. All the towns are all complaining about speed, and speed is up. To really give you an answer on why, I don't really know, other than I can tell you, when's the last time we saw a cruiser on the interstate?
Yeah,
And you know what the speeds are on the interstate. So when they get off the interstate, they're still traveling the same speeds when they're getting into our areas. So that's something that we have to somewhat factor in. But that's kind of where I came up with some of the different figures, trying to say we do need to raise it some, and then give you guys some guidance on what you want to work on, and give you the dollar figures to work on from there as far as what we do. I definitely thought during those months that were the summertime, where it was really hard, that we should probably have 2 shifts a week during that time. And sometimes I'm a little concerned whether or not that April, May time, whether or not we should be doing the same. Just because the minute things start warming up, it is crazy. And it's just whether or not we try to organize accordingly, and we can readjust the schedule as we need to as well during those periods where we can work, say, 2 shifts a month during the winter time, and then come out April, May is putting a few shifts during the week to be able to tighten it up and get the message out to people right off quick before summer does hit.
Can be as flexible or not as flexible
Yes.
as your budget and your desires allow for.
So I see it as an increase. I think it's $5,000 a year increase. Again, you guys can kind of figure out where you want to go on that, and be able to adjust accordingly.
Yeah, I know, I think in the last year or so, we looked at doing a pretty significant increase to our budget. Significant from our perspective, I guess, to try to do some more enforcement, to kind of respond to this and respond to conversations around, speed limit changes and that sort of thing. And, I think unfortunately, a lot of that got consumed by increases in hourly rates but, you know, I think we're trending in the right direction. I think enforcement is really probably the only way to get there. It's just an expensive way to do it. And I think we just have some harder conversations to work through and what our strategy is going to be to try to get the enforcement that we need, I think, to try to see if we can't make an impact. I think there's kind of an underlying interest still in revisiting the speed limit on the county road still. There's a vocal portion of the community that would like to see that subject revisited, and feel free to correct me, but I think that your opinion is
my opinion.
revisiting that would be worthwhile. My personal opinion, which is, I guess, softening to a certain extent, but we can talk about changing the speed limits all we want, but if we don't have a way to enforce it or a budget for enforcement, then what's going to change the behavior? It's just the sign.
I'm sure you guys saw the speed cart set up by Fitch Road, and
Yeah,
that was crazy. The numbers, the speeds coming out of Calais.
mm-hmm.
Gave us some very interesting data.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm curious, I agree that enforcement is really the only thing that'll really change behavior, but how do we know to the extent to which it does change behavior? If you have a full complement of enforcement, do you see people actually driving slower?
Where you're gonna go with this, and let me hit on this, and the Wakefield Warren area is one area that has kind of seen this a little bit, because we generally have less hours over there now. So instead of having, say, 16 hours during the day and 16 hours a night, plus some optional other hours, we're down significantly on hours out there. We're seeing huge speeds.
Yeah.
So if you don't see a cruiser, they know, as I said, look on the interstate. Just drive on the interstate, go to Burlington, and it's a racetrack, because how often do you see a car? What's the chances of getting stopped?
Statewide and nationwide, there's a lot of, data driven, it's just the way of doing business now. And, you do, like a rat pack is the commonly known term. You go into an area, you hit it hard with saturation controls and everything. It gets everyone slowed down. Just a couple, 2, 3, 4 days go by without that, and it's right back up. Oh, they must have moved on.
2 or 3 days.
That quick at this point, and the
Well,
data's there.
that's what makes you wonder if there isn't something else we could be doing as a community around this, in terms of, I'm just thinking about sort of, I say comfort forum, but, just the kind of effort around those statistics are astounding. And, to some extent, do we work with your office to put that together as information that we share out effectively with people, so that people know that we're paying attention to this, and that, it's a cost, by the way, that everyone wants us to keep our costs down, but the safety of our community is something that we maybe could be speaking out about in a way and maybe this has been done before, don't.
No.
But it just really, it is kind of shocking always when, I've only ever seen another one of these, and, it is always just, it just kind of takes your breath away. And the point you're making about the data that you collected for the monitor that was at Fitch Road. I thought about that, and I was like, that'd be interesting to see what happened around that. And if we are going to enter a conversation potentially at some point, I've heard this alluded to, that around the speed limit, then it would behoove us to have said a few things about it beforehand. So I'm just wondering, I don't know what the board has been on this in the past and where you all are feeling now, but again, it's just, I'm thinking about the safety of our community and putting, like, we at least need to be partners with the folks that we're hiring to help support the community.
Well, a lot of what we do in car stops is education. We have conversations about, what is going on and why it's a problem. And that only gets you so far, because when you have those conversations with people 2, 3, 4 times, because you start to see the same names popping up. We do not like issuing violations. That is not what we're out here for. But a lot of times that's the only way that people really get the message. And, stop doing this, it's dangerous. Yeah. Until it hits you somewhere a little closer to home.
Right.
It's not as effective. We try really hard, and that's our preferred method of doing business. But society has changed a little bit, and sometimes the kinder, gentler, trying to help people way isn't always effective. So for some people it is. One stop, they change their behaviors. A lot of them, not so much. You have anything to add on that?
The only thing I'd say is one of the benefits, the speakers been great. We haven't had the opportunity to use it enough yet, but I can tell you data-driven law enforcement is really a way to go as far as it tells us when the problems are.
What time of day, so you could really target,
Just understand, people are creatures of habit.
Yeah.
What they do today, they're gonna do tomorrow. What they did at 5 o'clock today, they're gonna do at 5 o'clock tomorrow, et cetera, et cetera. And perfect example, that speed cart was set up on Vincent Flats just prior to it being moved over on the county road. And literally I had the statistics to prove that. And I happened to be the one who worked that Friday after pulling that speed cart and moving it over. And 11 o'clock, in between 10:30 and 11, there was a number of them coming through by the school up in Vincent Flats that received some violations. And we're talking high speeds. So,
Right at the time.
again, data driven, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly what I had.
And I guess that's the part that's most concerning to me personally, is that, there's, when we've looked at the traffic studies and we have our own data from a handful of the,
RPC.
yeah. Which I want to touch on before we kind of conclude this conversation too. But, you know, it's the extremes of the people who are offending on the higher side that just seem like really outrageous. Like that's what's most eye-opening to me. And in some ways it's discouraging to feel like it almost doesn't seem like there's anything other than, you know, trying to have some sort of behavioral intervention with a handful of individuals, but it does look like it's, you know, it's habitual and somewhat predictable and whatever we can do, I guess we've had this conversation now circling back to the data part about trying to make regular share regularly what the data is coming off of at the speed limit sign. We've got one on the county road, and then there's the other one on Lightning Ridge. We've talked about deploying them and moving them around to maybe Peak and Brook, and just so that we can be collecting data more regularly. Are we pulling that data? I think Toby was going to be pulling that data.
I haven't seen it in a while, but yeah,
it almost seems like we need to come up with, we have these signs or assets in our community, right? So we bought them.
Okay, so we own those.
We
and
own
those are
those signs.
producing data.
And
that we
they
have access
they
to.
have the
Okay.
ability to capture the data. So I think we almost need to just like stand up a policy that says how frequently we're going to be pulling that data and who's responsible
Well,
for
and-
transferring
and
it over.
sharing it.
And well, and sharing it for enforcement.
And I can schedule accordingly.
Yeah,
Yeah. Other than that, you know, I think anecdotally, the idea of trying to set a bias towards the spring and summer months for shifts makes good sense, for sure. You had your hand up to comment. Make sure I shut back up.
Comments. Does somebody have the actual figure for the proposal for the enforcement for the year?
Would you state your name, the recording secretary, please?
Jim Wells.
I think it was $7,500.
the present contract is 7,000, correct? And the proposal is 12,200.
It's really up to us. I mean,
And-
I'm saying the rate is 68 per hour. And if it's a 3-hour shift, you know, with mileage in there. You'll set the number that you want the overall budget, and then we'll figure out the hours.
But we
So
heard,
my next question is, you know, we have, I see this tonight on the front page forum, there's this committee for social services for allotments. So what are we looking for the allotment this year for the library in Montpelier?
That's a separate warrant article.
But it's still funded by tax dollars, am I correct?
Yeah, but it's voted on at town meeting as a separate article.
So I agree with the young lady on the corner, they're a terrible name, so please forgive me.
Name's Barbara.
I agree with her, and we have these speed signs that are an asset. And this data should be pulled regularly, and we should be doing, Lamoille County does it, for example, they put in a stat, we could use the front page forum of what the speeds are that given week, and let's use education for the taxpayers to help understand this burden. And they might maybe say, okay, well, maybe enforcement is a little more important than that much money. Maybe we could reduce some items to help offset the cost for enforcement if people actually knew what was going on in the community. I mean, I hate to say that we're not gonna take this serious until a child gets hit coming off the bus. There's a DUI crash into a house in Maple Corners, and then by that time, it's too late to throw money at it. We need to educate our taxpayers and let them make the decision, okay, is this a good idea? Maybe we could trim the fat in some other areas to focus on some other areas and maybe get this under control. I drive a truck for a living, 500-600 miles a week. And when I leave for the work in the morning at 4 and 5 o'clock in the morning, County Road's a racetrack. It's a racetrack
at 4 in the morning.
at 4 in the morning. And I've expressed it to the sheriff.
Yeah, I hear you and I appreciate the comments. I think, when we're having these budget conversations, it's helpful to know like what a certain percentage of our budget it is, and that number is $17,000 is 1% of our budget. I don't think in this particular case, increasing a meaningful increase to the sheriff department's contracted rates is untenable when compared to some of the other expenses that we have as a town. My concern is how scalable is it, and can we ever get to the point where we feel like it's adequately funded to the extent that we're making an impact on the behavior and changing. And I think from my perspective, at least, like, I think it really does have to come with a certain amount of community education around it. I think that's a really great idea. And so, not only are we establishing a policy that says like this is who's responsible and how often we're going to be pulling the data and sharing it with the sheriff's department, but also while we're doing that, like, by the way, community, these are the rates of speeds that we're seeing and why we're needing to increase budgets to
Right. To get that.
if you want to be, and I think it's going to be an open dialogue. I'm stopping short of saying that we need like a committee to figure out like how to navigate that communication like regularly or help facilitate it. But I'm all ears for what types of programs other communities have deployed to try to see an impact and these types of numbers, because clearly they're still not trending in an adequate direction.
I don't want to go the direction that Waitsfield's going.
No.
Given
Well,
last week.
and to understand the numbers and the shifts that you were talking about, and to confirm what you said was that in the summer months, you were going to or you're basing the request on 2 shifts per week. And then there's this big chunk of time from September to April when it's every other week.
Right.
And that's based on traffic generally not being as fast during that period.
Kids are back in school,
Okay.
things are not as busy, but you still have a feed problem.
Sure, yeah,
So,
okay.
like I said, years ago, it was pretty clear, a lot of the contracts from October-ish, we didn't even start back up until March.
Mhm.
Now it's not that way.
It doesn't know it's time.
It's crazy, unfortunately.
Okay.
So the speeds aren't slowing down. I think the public education part is a very large piece, and I can't go through all the statistics, or I shouldn't say I haven't gone through all the statistics, but in most of the towns, unfortunately, it's the locals that we're dealing with.
Tends to be the rule whenever we get speed complaints.
It tends to be either the ones that are complaining, they're the speeders, or somebody very close by. So that is not uncommon. So doing public education and hitting the community, seeing these speeds may make some changes.
These are almost entirely on Route 14 and County Road, yes?
Yes.
Yeah, Route 14 might not be local.
It's a mixed bag.
And I would just be curious if we did find a way to educate the taxpayers of Calais with some of these stats, how many people could hold a straight face with 30 and 40 miles an hour, that many incidents that are caught in a month's time and not be appalled.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think our own data, I mean, we're probably one of a handful of communities that actually has the ability to have, like, to take our own data and show that and post that. And that I think is gonna get right to your point. I mean, right now, this is a report from the sheriff's department, which are the ones that they observe, but, I think we have greater line of sight through.
And this is public record, so by all means, and any data that you needed. I know it was requested to provide monthly stats or billing stats, whatever the case may be. We've been doing that. We're more than happy to upgrade whatever we need to do on that end. We're still working on our website to make it so hopefully it'll be a little easier for you guys to be able to get in and actually look at what's going on as well.
That's
At least
good.
we have a website now,
Yeah.
so.
At least.
Yeah.
Can be done, work in progress, okay.
It's just taking time, that's all.
So real quick, education
Yeah.
wise, just on this, I think we talked about it last year, but I've been asked a few times the 80 cents per mile plus the 10 cents. What's up with the 10 cents? Because we're pegged to the federal rate, which is the 80. So why the 10? And that's really the police equipment, everything that goes into the car, because the 80 cents covers the car. It's usually, depending on how fancy you go, between an 8 to 14-ish thousand per car for police specific equipment. So it's to help offset some of those costs. The costs are just out of control. Another thing, we were talking about the speed cart. I haven't seen it an issue here yet, but a lot of stuff is being shared. I've seen this nationwide in other counties, that the speed cart have LPRs built in and they have tracking devices built in and all this stuff, which is not necessarily true. So I want to try to get ahead of it a little bit. Our speed cart does not have an LPR, which is a license plate reader. It does not read license plates and report people's whereabouts back to anyone. It is not equipped that way.
At certain speeds, it will take a picture of the vehicle.
Correct, it just takes a picture. It doesn't go into any database, it doesn't do anything like that, it comes to us, period. And then we do with it as we see please, or as we please. So if you have some questions coming from people about, what data is this collecting, we're more than happy to share with people, but it's not tied into anything, we're not spying on them all the time. So please send them our direction if they have those concerns.
And when we put it in Calais, if you people want that information, it's pretty easy to read and more than happy to send it to you.
Is there a fee associated with that deployment? Like
You want it?
I mean,
We're deploying them in the towns as part of the service, as part of your contract.
Oh,
There are
Okay, so
fees
it's not something that's like on a schedule or.
okay.
part of the contract.
Okay.
So there are some internal fees for us, downloading and everything else. That is our problem we've had, so.
Personally, right now, as long as we have cell service, I literally can go on my laptop and see the readings within, I think it's 3 or 4 hours. So
And how would we, like, on what, basis are you posting it?
as far as where we're gonna put it,
Yeah.
generally I've been going off the different complaints that we've been getting and then going out and posting it from there. This type of weather, I kind of have to watch, unfortunately. We haven't, my fault, I haven't had a chance to sit down and type up the paperwork to get the permit to put it on the state highways yet.
Okay.
So, cause you have to have a permit to be able to put it on any of the state highways, which we're gonna have a blanket permit. It's just a matter of typing it up and getting it done.
It's not cheap.
But, yeah, is what it is. But anyways, other than that, it's just setting it up. We were getting complaints in different areas, like I said, the swamp here and the county road and Vincent Flats, those 2 places we got some complaints. I put it out there to see what was actually truthfully going on. As I said, it was surprising.
Yeah.
And we just have the one machine, so it has to be shared with all of our contractors. So it's gonna be here, there and everywhere.
Thank you.
Sorry,
Jim,
one
Jim,
quick
yeah,
question. I'm not a computer person, computers are evil. But we have a website. Now, is there some way you folks could connect with the sheriff's department so the cat can download the data and maybe have access to that website to download it, or give it to a liaison at the town office to download it weekly maybe, or when it's there, to let people see something?
The sheriff's department or the community?
Well, I mean, the community to see, let them know that you're gonna try this. We have access to a speed car as part of our, it's a service provided by the sheriff's department because we contract with them. Maybe that's one way of sharing that data so they could see, well, wait a minute, there are people doing 71 miles an hour yesterday on a place where I have children.
Yeah.
Well, and in any event, we can do it with the ones that we have.
Yeah, I think we can have a conversation about doing that with the ones that we currently have and
I
get
just think
into a
that
process.
is the shortest, quickest thing to start getting some information flowing and see how the public reacts.
Yeah.
But I'm more than pleased to supply the data weekly.
Okay,
Yeah, when it's out here, it's done.
yeah, that's good enough.
It's neat.
Helpful.
Well, thank you. I want to be respectful of everybody's time here. I appreciate the comments on that, and it sounds like there's interest in all sides here to kind of get us rolling in a better direction. So, we'll find a way to revisit that conversation and see if we can't dial in on something that works and that we can be consistent with. So, so thanks very much, gents, for the time and service. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for service.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Really appreciate it.
Anytime, any questions, you know how to find us, please.
We'll do,
Okay.
yeah. They travel some.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Then next up is the East Montclair Fire Department. Thanks, Jim. Welcome back.
Yes, so for anybody who doesn't know, myself and Daryl, my Thomas Barker, I recently took over as fire chief after Calais resigned on October first. And Daryl took over as president, and Jake Hoffman is manager of president. So we currently have 2 utility trucks. We have a 2011 F-150, F-250. That was the primary truck. It carries some of our forestry equipment, some extra traffic supplies, and tows our UTV trailer. When we purchased a new ambulance last December, we decided to try to use the old ambulance to house some of that extra equipment, to take some weight out of that older truck. It's worked okay. It's a big truck, so it's not as convenient for forestry calls and stuff to get up driveways. And then the F-250, we recently discovered has some pretty severe body rot. It's seen a lot of time in Vermont. It sits outside. It doesn't have a lot of miles, but it's got some issues. So we have located in Massachusetts a brand new F-350. It's a little bit heavier spec, should handle the equipment better. It has a utility body on it, which will hopefully cross kind of between what we're hoping to do with that old ambulance, to have some exterior compartments, as well as the 4-man cab to tow the UTV trailer and get people to scenes. You guys have a quote that I sent over? Okay.
Yeah.
So we were offered $5,500 in trade for that rusty F-250. Give us a trade difference of $65,489. That doesn't include any upfitting. That'll be some lights. We're gonna use an existing radio and siren, and some graphics. That old ambulance, I didn't have numbers for East Montpelier, but I do now. They offered us $14,000 for that.
Great.
We were offered 10, we traded it, which is why we decided for 10,000. We try to use it as the utility. We're hoping that 14,000 should cover all of the updating expenses as well, hopefully replenish some capital money. So we're not asking for any money, we're just getting permission to use some of our capital money to purchase this.
Yeah, pretty straightforward. We had the opportunity to kind of touch on this a little bit when Kara and I met with East Montclair Selectboard and these guys last week. What day is it today? It must have been
1 week ago.
Must have been last week. Yeah. That's some good dialogue. We had a little bit of line of sight on this particular request, but it certainly seems to make good sense to me.
And the balance in the capital fund is solid.
Is
299, 299,000. Yeah, these are the requests that are easier. Compared to pay the entire. They just need the authority from the 2 towns.
So do we need a vote?
Yeah, we can vote to authorize the use of the fire department's capital reserve fund for the procurement of
The F-350?
the F-350 utility truck. Unless there are any other questions.
Seems important.
Yes, yeah. And thanks for looking into those trades. I think
Yes.
that's great use of liquidating rusty assets. So with that, can I entertain a motion to approve and authorize the East Montpelier Fire Department's use of their capital reserve funds for the purchase of an F-350 utility truck?
So moved.
All right, great.
Okay.
All in favor? Aye. All right, well, there you have it, Jeff. Yeah,
And we'll see you in 2 weeks.
see you in 2 weeks. Yeah, thanks. Great. So moving right along a little ahead of schedule, so we have a conversation about the Lakes and Streams Committee, and I guess for a little bit of context, this came up briefly during the Conservation Commission's budget request, and there was some question around whether they could or are Lakes and Streams is a subcommittee of the Conservation Commission, and this is just meant to be kind of a dialogue, I guess, for the select board and any members of the Lakes and Stream committee. It looks like maybe on Zoom.
Yeah,
Noreen's here, yeah.
Yep.
You're right, and
And David.
there it is.
Hmm,
So can I
voted?
just ask for clarification?
Yes.
So the idea was someone proposing that they become a body of?
Well, at the risk of misrepresenting
Uh-huh.
things grossly, there was. So Neil Maker didn't necessarily feel like they were a subcommittee of the Conservation Commission, or at least the Conservation Commission wasn't in charge of making appointments to the Lakes and Streams
So in the
committee.
context of who appoints?
And so there's context of who appoints whom, and to what, and for what. There's certainly no question that, the Lakes and Streams, committee has been diligent in keeping record of their meetings and has a body of work that they annually produce, which is the pamphlet and report on Lakes and Streams. But it's also a perennial line item that gets discussed with the Conservation Commission's budget. And so it just, because we were having a conversation around budgeting and some new appointment considerations, there was some dialogue about, why is Lakes and Streams a subcommittee of the Conservation Commission, and not its own standalone committee, and would there be any benefit to it being a standalone committee that would then require certain obligations to warning meetings and keeping minutes, as well as an obligation to the select board to make certain appointments. From my perspective, it seems in practice very similar to the Trails Committee, and that there's an annual budget that needs to be reviewed and considered and discussed. And it's largely, yeah.
Can I push on that annual budget
Sure.
commentary? For many years, they used a municipal grant to
Oh.
publish their newsletter. And so
Right.
that's why we have a budget line item for newsletter, because they couldn't get the grant without doing it through their municipality. So we have all the paperwork from the grant history. That's the only budget line item they ever asked for. And then when they stopped getting that grant, I don't know if they didn't receive it or didn't apply. That's when conservation started requesting a portion of the amount required to do the newsletter, because Lakes and Streams was not an official town committee.
Right.
And they worked together on projects, even though one was a town committee and one is technically.
And I think the grant went away, because my.
There is still an educational grant. I have it bookmarked. They still have information from last February, so I have it. I check every month or so, and I have it in mind to send to Lakes and Streams as soon as they update for their 2026 requirements.
So then there's really just kind of an effort to kind of solicit some feedback. Obviously, we don't want to have this conversation in a vacuum. So Noreen and David were certainly invited to offer some commentary and context as well. And so really, we just wanted to just open the dialogue a little bit and see if there is anything that change that should or should not be considered there isn't a desire to push it one way or the other. I don't think at this point, but just wanted to try to open up some dialogue there. There's a memo that kind of outlines this that was in the shared drive that hopefully everyone's had the opportunity to review as well.
The memo from the committee.
Yeah.
Wasn't there part of the context of an increase in costs? Is that not part of the discussion or no? Was that not? Am I misremembering?
No, there wasn't an increasing cost last year. There was I think we reduced the amount allocated or appropriated to the printing, and then they raised money to have it printed. Anyway, Noreen and David, I'd welcome your input and an opinion on the matter, I guess, at hand here, on whether or not it's subcommittee versus a standalone committee.
I don't know, David, shall I start and you can then jump in, or
Sure.
I think we had a meeting of the group of people who are members of the Lakes and Streams, and I think all of us have had experience serving on other bodies, et cetera. We've been informal for a long time, and when you read through the Open Meetings Act and even the application process that Calais requires, I guess we're concerned that the administrative burden would be very difficult for us. In other words, it would take away a great deal from the amount of work we put into doing these things. I think we think of ourselves as a body that wants to encourage good stewardship of lakes and streams. And to that end, we work in multiple ways. One of it is the newsletter, which you see because it comes into the budget. But we also do other things. And one of the things, I mean, we've been working for a lot of years on this lay monitoring program, which is the state's program for collecting data on the water quality. And the purpose of that is to see, are there trends developing? Are we getting better? Are we getting worse? And to what extent? We have people who do paddle around the ponds to look for invasive species. Not all the ponds are covered, but we keep trying to do outreach to find somebody who will do that. For those, how do I want to get it in a nutshell? For those lakes and ponds in Vermont that have invasives such as Eurasian milfoil, the amount of money that these towns are spending to control that are in the $50,000 to $100,000 range. And so the volunteer effort to say, let's see if we can just find any of this early and solve the problem early before it becomes a major expense. So that's the kind of thing we do. I think we're heavily focused right at the moment on an invasive grass called Phragmites, which can literally take over wetlands and the shorelines of lakes and ponds. Calais has a handful of Phragmites patches, and it's like the time is now to try to deal with the problem and not wait till it becomes really severe. We've been in contact with two people, one with UVM and one with the Vermont Extension, who have worked on knotweed in Waitsfield and Warren, and we're hoping that they want to have a project in the Upper Winooski watershed, which includes Calais, and dealing with invasives. The idea would be, can we solve this problem now while it's solvable? I've recently talked with Hans Estrin, who's part of the Vermont Extension, and they didn't get their first grant, so I'm not sure exactly what's happening. I do think that depending on the direction that this goes, this is something that certainly we would feel it was important to bring to you to understand, to decide if you think the effort's there. It's not a big cost issue, it's a volunteer issue and finding volunteers. If in the past, the UVM has used grants or other money and used young people who are part of their ecological programs to do a lot of the heavy work. So that's kind of a little background on who we are. We thought that, I think we were concerned about the administrative burden I've lived through other situations where just having a quorum to be able to discuss business is not trivial, especially on a little organization like ours. In other words, you have to be very careful about how you handle phone calls and meetings. And so I think we were concerned about that. At the same time, I think that we do some advertising on Front Porch Forum. We could be more consistent about trying to reach out to the public and use that, even if we remain an informal committee, use that as a way to be sure that anybody can participate who's interested. And we certainly we've done a lot of that outreach. We're still challenged by finding people who want to commit the time. David, what have I missed?
The only thing that I would add is that so much of our work is done informally. And there's the old adage, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And everybody, I mean, it was unanimous among the committee that we remain an informal committee. So we don't, I mean, we do, and we've had some success in the past year with outreach. I think we have 2 new people that are prospective members of the committee. So, I think operating the way we've been operating seems to work for us. And, and I guess we're not aware of any problems that are resulting because of that.
No, I wouldn't say that there are any problems by any stretch of the imagination. There just seems to be, I think, a little ambiguity around, who's responsible for approving and making the appointments to the committee and what we're tracking. And nobody.
There's no appointment.
There's no appointment.
It sounds like you're not actually part of the Conservation Commission, right?
They're not.
You're not.
No, the way I see it is they're essentially independent
It's a
of
bunch of volunteers.
the town of Calais. They're a bunch of volunteers doing good things,
Doing great
organizing
things.
themselves.
Yeah.
The only nexus I
Things they
see
get.
is the newsletter
Yeah.
funding, with $250 is what's being requested.
So, can I ask you, David?
Well, I think there's also a possibility for, I think, grant, and I think this has now come up a couple of times. What's that?
Yeah. That's what they asked.
The request was for 800 this year, FY 26 was budgeted.
What, for what?
Oh, sorry, yeah, you're right.
Newsletter.
Yeah.
And the proposed budget for FY 27, was just presented as 1,600 as part of the commissions.
So the Conservation Commission comes in and requests money that's gonna go to the committee for the newsletter.
Yeah.
That's right. And then the last couple of years, we've taken that 1,600 and said, well,
We've not.
how about half?
Yeah.
Okay.
And they've raised the other half, and we'll have the opportunity to revisit that portion of the conversation.
So, and another concern is that we simply don't have any records in the town office of their work. We don't have their minutes, meetings, or any of the background information on this organization and what they're doing.
We do have one 5-page document that I believe Noreen typed up at some point that gives sort of the origin story, but that's about it. And that's why part of this conversation, because I got started and asked Noreen if she had more background, just so I could understand better. And she said, oh, I've got a bunch. Do you want to keep it at the town office? I don't have it at my house anymore. And then we're like, well, it's not actually a town group. So is that appropriate? And that was part of the conversation.
Yeah.
So it's a volunteer group
Yeah.
that gets town money for one purpose on an annual basis.
Right.
It would be more consistent, it seems to me, if they were an organized nonprofit receiving one of the social service appropriations. Right? That
Right.
would be more akin to how we usually
And
fund
the money
something.
doesn't actually, are we just paying an invoice for a newsletter? Is that what's
Yes.
happening? We're not sending money somewhere other than to the vendor, correct? Directly to the vendor. Yeah.
So
Right, and
the other
rel-
thing that.
Can I just add one thing? I mean, relative to records, years ago, I don't think there was an interest in saving records, and I think that Tegan and I chatted a little bit. I'm happy to put together an inventory of what we have, and then we can make a decision of if the town whatever the town wants to keep is something we'd be delighted to give to them.
Yeah, I think that's like a nice next step. I promised I would do the impression that I had these guys to suffer in the agenda planning meeting. But, I think from my perspective, as somebody who doesn't have as much perspective as some of the elders in the community, sometimes we end up getting blindsided by the lack of context to these pretty significant bodies of work that are just, in the basements and in the offices of volunteers who have done this work over decades. And, I think there's like the ancient roads committees and like these committees that have a very focused scope of work for a period of time. And then, it goes several years or something without hearing about that. And then you can get blindsided by the lack of context or information or records. And I'm not to say that has been the case with lakes and streams, but I think that it would be nice, and I would certainly be open to, trying to transfer some of those records just so that we are kind of archiving that history. So that the information and context can be celebrated and utilized as much as possible. And let's start with that as a first step. And then, I do think that there's maybe an opportunity for evolving dialogue around this. Noreen, I think that you noted that like it seems at this point in time that the funding for water quality programs and projects is more stable than other forms of funding or project funding. And there seems to be a lot of overlap with the funding of those and prioritization of some of those projects relative to like municipal infrastructure and stormwater runoff. So I think to the extent that in the near future we get to the point where we're looking at maybe trying to fund projects through one of these other funding sources, we may need to revisit this just because we'll be talking about, appropriating or allocating funding for a project that we might want to collaborate with lakes and streams more formally around, like grant administration or something like that. But that is something, that's a conversation we can have when that bridge is ready to be crossed. So we don't have to talk about that in a hypothetical now, but.
I would just say that first of all, appreciation for the work. I think it's really admirable and needed. And I think what it makes me think about as a board is, Noreen, you said it's like you want to stay informal, and it's also challenging to get people engaged. And the work is so substantive, what you've laid out. So those things all together start to make me think about, the durability and sustainability of the work and how we support that to continue.
Yeah.
And I think that's the context that maybe I would just emphasize there. This is like it's important work, and there's ties. I can just imagine there's some ties with sort of Friends of Winooski and some of the other, organizations that are doing good work, but this volunteer core people doing great work also, we want to make sure it doesn't just fade. If there were, if we were to lose some of the enthusiasm of the committee. So that's what I'm thinking about as a reflection of what you all said. Really appreciate it greatly.
The only thing that what I was going to just add is in terms of our archives there, I believe our newsletters are all posted at the town website. So there's some history there. It's not everything, but it's something.
Yeah, they're on our website, and we have hard copies of most of them, I think, in the book.
Right.
Well, go ahead, Noreen.
No, one of the things that we haven't as a committee had a chance to talk about this again this year, but we do think that Front Porch Forum is a potentially valuable vehicle to just have short articles and information for the public. And we did a series last year on what is the meaning of water quality. Got some feedback on that, but when I came to the pond almost 30 years ago, I asked that question, what does water quality mean? And it was really hard to get an answer because it means so many different things. So anyway, I think we are interested in, if there are questions or things that you feel the community is interested in or really needs to know, we're interested in that and trying to help.
Well, thank you, Noreen and David, for joining us and sharing the information and bring the topic up to the committee. I think, we have the opportunity to just kind of respect their wishes for the status quo for now, and it's great to check in directly, and certainly I think we'll stay poised to support you the best we can. And thank you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your time and all the work you've done. Absolutely.
All right. Bye.
Good night.
Goodbye.
Well, thanks for entertaining that conversation. Well, Tegan, go forth with Eric. I think I decide that you see fit, and I guess as long as we
Take stuff out of my vault, so maybe we'll have some extra stuff.
And so we have a period of public comment up next, but I don't think we have any members of the public. So we'll, unless anybody wants to be a member of the public and comment on something that's not on the agenda. No,
We'll do this back on time.
all right.
I'm not commenting, I'm just moving up.
Well, that seems reasonable. Moving on to administrative items. We have the approval of minutes, the copy of which has been posted to the shared drive. Has everybody had the opportunity to review that? And are there any comments or questions, concerns, corrections? I didn't see any myself. Can I get a motion there?
Hold my breath every time.
Yeah. Oh, well, now that I know that, I'm gonna really dwell on it next time. Stretch it out. Drama.
Just look at this typo.
Yeah, I feel like that means that we're just not doing a job. Can I get a motion to approve the October 27th select board minutes as posted?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Board orders also posted to the share drive. And didn't look like there were any significant notes on them in today's memo. Unless that's changed.
Pretty straightforward.
Pretty straightforward. Can I get a motion to accept and sign the board orders as posted to the share drive?
So moved.
Again, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. And there's
Thanks for negotiating that down. The damn thing. Oh, was that last week? Sorry. No. Not the damn thing, the
overage
thing.
on.
Oh,
Overage,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. Yeah, that was a productive drive to very.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Well done.
Employee bonuses. This is a year-end bonus that we budgeted for, relative to a $500 bonus, end of year bonus to all full-time and part-time employees.
No, less the part-time,
Less the part-time?
wasn't it?
So what we did is we
Alright.
put $4,500 worth of bonuses in there. The idea was 500 for full timers. And there'd be a little bit of extra money, so seven full timers, there's another 1,000 in there. And we have Ed Rowell works half-time. And then there are people that work, like Sheena and Toby and John McCullough who work more hours than others, but you gotta draw the line somewhere, but. I guess I would recommend certainly doing the 500 and then the 250 for Ed. Remember last year we gave Ed the trailer?
Yeah. You don't have another trailer?
That was
Some other rusty implement that's like, in around. So do we need to make a decision on where we draw the line and spreading the balance out? Cause we have the $1,000 difference there. Anybody have an opinion on how or where?
I'm just like, what you're saying, can you say that?
So there's the allocation or the allocation, budget allocation was $4,500.
Right.
And we have 7 employees.
And that was based
that would
on
bring us to
9 employees, I guess.
the,
well, there's just, I think there was the thought that we would do something for other people as
Okay.
well.
Okay,
So it's just a little extra.
okay.
yeah, we deferred that decision making. We just made the line item for it. So there's $1,000 extra in the budget. And I don't have a specific proposal for where to draw the line and.
Maybe Barbara can share some wisdom.
So I have two thoughts. One is John McCullough, as both our zoning administrator and lister, puts in a lot of hours and kind of gets almost minimum pay for the hours that he does. So he's one.
Dan gives out his home phone number and has told me just have anyone call, like he has no qualms about people calling him at home about these things.
So I offer him as a consideration. And then Toby, not only as our assistant road commissioner and our highway grants administrator, and now he's also a lister. And so I just see his contributions as somewhat invaluable to the town. So those are two people that I'd like to recommend for consideration.
And he has jumped into the lister thing head first, like he has been coming to me asking for data so we can update some things. And so he and I have been working together on some smaller projects that I've kind of had in my pipeline, but haven't gotten around to doing. And it's been nice to have someone else be like, that's a great idea. We're gonna get that done. Oh, you've already done half of it. Great. I'll do the other half. So I second that he has worked really hard since he's become a lister.
So then I have John, Shanna, Ed, and Toby.
I think Kari's already considered Ed in there at half.
Yeah.
And no, but Ed's part of that 1,000.
Right.
So the 1,000 was
Yeah,
Ed
yeah.
for 250, it sounded like, yeah.
And then.
So we have 750 left.
Right, so that would be 250 for John, Shayna, and Toby. So that would, with the addition of Ed.
Remove myself. And I only say that because they do, like the others do significant amount of time for the town and I'm not saying that I don't, but I recognize that their efforts are vast and extreme and I'm well compensated for what I do, so. In my opinion, I'm
Oh my
okay.
goodness.
Well, there's an extra $250 if you don't.
Bump up the others.
Well, I mean, we
Or
do have
put it in the
others,
fund.
like the animal control person.
Yeah, there's.
I know, do we have a clear list here?
I have the page of everybody open, but it's a long.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
a long page. Like it's been kind of a quiet year for Buffy, knock on wood, thank goodness. I love
Yeah.
that. It's great, but it's been kind of a quiet year for her.
Look at the work chart on the back of your.
Sandra would be the person that puts in significant hours.
It may trigger something.
Sorry, I
Here's
shouldn't
the
have made it
emergency
so
management
complicated.
director.
There is the emergency management.
What happens when we try to be responsible about it and.
You'll be precise next year.
The emergency management director.
Yeah. So, the threshold we're looking for here is what? I'm, and also should be.
Beyond the
Is this select board work or is it?
Yeah, yeah.
To
Right.
Kari.
Why don't I come back with a more precise proposal next time?
That would be lovely.
I just feel.
I know, it shouldn't make this kind of decision on the spot.
Yeah, and after this year, we won't do it anymore. Well, no, I'm sorry.
Oh, take that.
Hey, people. We'll all be volunteers here from now, so.
New contract,
Right.
we will have a new contract. And so it'll be different, whatever it is.
Yeah, but that contract won't cover other full-time staff, so we'd still have to budget for it.
Right, so the big chunk, yeah, we'll have to do something, but it will be different, because my only point, thank you.
Yes, okay.
Don't put that.
All about your whole
Well, we'll always have the recording.
We'll table that very controversial budgeted item, to next time. On that note, let's move to a staffing conversation. So this is, an ongoing dialogue, about, staffing and budgeting associated with roles. So, there's a office staffing, section or folder, posted to Share Drive, where we've got, Calais Town Administrator, job description, which Kari, added into the folder, as well as an update from Tegan on hourly breakdown of critical tasks, which is very helpful. Thank you, for doing that. And then, Kari, added a role analysis, broken up by town administrator, road commissioner, and treasurer roles with key functions and hourly estimates. And by my math, that put those three roles somewhere around 70 hours a week. So we've got
90.
So we've got some dialogue to have.
Did I do math badly on
No.
Some are annual.
I'm guessing that's probably about right. And if it's not 70 hours a week, then it's just the core proficiency. But
I know some of mine were annual and some of mine were weekly.
Yeah.
I think yours were too.
that? All right. I tried to do annual with this one. So
It's more annual hours.
you did a really more detailed version like I did for treasurer
Yeah.
last time.
Yeah.
Because that was the model I was
Yeah.
working with, and so I
And,
took.
and mine is like, I see it as like the next level up. Like I actually took those treasurer and aggregated them into
Yeah.
categories.
Mhm.
But then it was also looking at the other roles. And there's all kinds of assumptions, and those are estimates because I don't have
Definitely.
detailed one, but it gives you a sense. And then I also added in the grants administrator position, what Toby does, and the delinquent tax collector. You know, just consider those, because those functions could be combined, or they could be delegated to another person. They're kind of fluid, but they're related, you know? So anyway, and that was more based on the discussion that Barbara and Jordan and I had about just sort of thinking about these as discrete units that we choose to combine in this way right now, but they could be combined in other
They
ways.
don't always have to be that way, yeah.
I also think and I appreciate that you added in relative to those responsibilities under each of those titles or roles, some salary information associated with that, because I think so there's two parts of this. One is trying to document the stuff for contingency continuity planning, and just starting to wrap our heads around the scope of work that everybody's doing, but also taking a much finer and more refined look at compensation rates for folks who are performing these tasks that seem to sometimes also spread across multiple formally defined roles within the town. So I think maybe we'll start with Tegan's, and see if there's any particular lines of discussion over what she's got prepared as a breakdown of her roles and responsibilities.
One comment I want to make is we have Barbara's job description that she prepared last spring. And I compared it to the job description I have for myself and what I'm actually doing. And I will say, as far as assistant clerk duties, we do a lot of the same things. She does them instead of me, and she does them very well, but I've taken on, I do I do most of the things or all of the things that you do. Does that make sense?
Except the board committee and commission.
Yes, but I wasn't sure if that counted as select board assistant or as assistant.
Yeah.
I think
All that-
Yes.
All of the scheduling, appointing, select board, I don't. I
Touch.
I try not to do that. You don't need too many cooks in the kitchen. The only one person should be doing all of that finagling.
Tegan, in doing this,
Yes.
what, were there any surprises that you came across or, you know, discoveries, other than what you just mentioned? Was there anything else?
I don't think so. It's so hard to do this because it varies so much from week to week, and I'm sure as town administrator Carr has the same thing. Is it's one of those jobs where a phone call could be a 5-minute phone call, or it could mean the next 3 hours of your day, and you never know what's going to happen and when it's going to happen. And I have been educated by other clerks to take most seriously the person in front of you, and next most seriously the phone call, and then after that, all the stuff that needs to get done at some point. And so that person who walks in is the most important thing to me at that moment. I try really hard to maintain that, to make people feel heard, to make people feel welcome, to make sure that they can find the information they need or accomplish the tasks they need to do. Like that's my job, is to make sure when people come in because a parent has died, or they had a baby, or they want to get married, or they bought a house, or they sold, all these things you don't do very often, and you don't know all the machinations that are happening behind the scenes. It's my job to be like, you're not an idiot. No one knows how to do this until they do it, and here I am to help you facilitate that. So I didn't know how to quantify that, but that's a lot of my job.
Customer service.
Customer service.
Yeah, and you know, and the access and responsiveness, I think that's a very key piece that.
And it is really important. I mean, I remember when I moved here, 12 years ago, that talking to the town clerk was one of the really important things you did.
Oh, yeah, Barbara and I will always remember the first day I walked in there, and we registered to vote, registered my dog, and it was an important time.
Yeah. So, thank you for doing that.
I had that same thought when I was doing my version of this, because then I had to think about not just those essential tasks, but the other things that I do. And customer service is a big one. In fact, I've got almost 3 weeks worth of customer service. That's a rough estimate. But then on top of that, sometimes customer service turns into project work, and that can really chew up a lot of time. So, it's a reality of what we do.
Even if I've gotten the same question from so many different people, I need a better system for either organizing that information or facilitating that education like that. That's where a lot of the projects I work on come from. Is what is a question I get a lot that's really hard, like septics. Septic systems is one of my long-term projects because people want to know, and we have information about septics in various folders and locations, and some of it's with the state, and some of it's with us, and some of it's in this folder, and some of it's actually. So like that's an example of enough people ask for septics, and you're like, all right, I need a list of all the parcel IDs and whether I have septic information and where it is. So that's the kind of thing. The project that comes out of answering people's questions repeatedly. And I gotta tell you, Toby was tickled when he found I had already started that spreadsheet.
Is there anything that you're doing, because this is a funny way to say this. You know how we take on work because we're good at something? Or is there anything you're doing?
Technology.
Technology.
I'm under 40. I answer that. I'm not a tech person. If you ask anyone who is also my age, I am not a tech person. But just because I'm as young as I am, I end up helping with a lot of that. And I know how to Google things. Or sometimes Barbara does a thing 3 times and it doesn't work, and then I go and stand by her desk and then it works for her. Which usually I'm the person.
That's a really important role, don't you? Yeah. The moral support is a thing.
That's an interesting one. I think because like there's a fair amount of working with RV Tech, and I can see like both from like a records retention and access. But then there's just like regular kind of town administrative element of that as well, where it's like it's this extra scope of work that you're probably involved in that definitely exceeds the minimum requirements for performing the role, but.
Yeah, because Corey and I will usually try to work through an issue.
Yeah.
As much as we can, and so like when we get to that last bit, we're like, we really can't, we have to ask our VTech to do this, because it costs money every time we call them.
Yeah.
And it's an automatic 15-minute, $32 or whatever it is that they charge us, and so we try really hard not to go there unless it's something we really need them to do that we cannot.
Did you find this to be a helpful exercise to break it down this way, or?
I found it interesting just to think through all the things and try to put together how I structure my days, because usually it's a very responsive sort of environment, is responding to the emails and responding to the phone calls. So yeah, I did find it interesting.
Have you seen the role analysis that Kari did for the town administrator, road
I
commissioner?
did not, I didn't get a chance to look at it. I didn't have access to it though.
I'm wondering if you think it'd be appropriate to ask Tegan to do something similar, because I think that it's similar information, but I think it's organized in a little bit different way. Where you're.
Yeah, it's the next level up.
It's the next level up of that dialogue.
I think what we're leading up to is something like that for the clerk, but then something like that for the position that replaces Barbara.
Yeah.
Like what's missing from these two roles that we desperately need, and then how do we staff that most efficiently?
Yeah, so I guess that would be my request, is that we have something like that for the town clerk as well, and try to capture maybe somehow those related roles or extra supplemental things that you get involved in as we start to zero in on what the additional position is, or how we want to frame that description. Before we start going to the community asking and fund it. I think that it's going to in part come from looking at the role analysis that Kari provided and a role analysis that Tegan provided, and trying to put salary expectations around those. And as we break things apart and reorganize them relative to the point in time and the people that we have in the office, and who we'd like to hire to make up those, make up any deficit that we have, or reallocate those things so that we can free up bandwidth. That's been a huge part of this conversation as well.
Yeah, and be thinking with this next hire about which of these functions could they take on in the future if things work out. That's what I mean by like this, like planning for future delegation and growth. At least having that flexibility, but that's just a way of organizing our thinking. So anyway, I'm hoping that we can get to the point where we have a job description and we can start recruiting in, say, January. I think that would be good to just keep moving forward.
I think that's definitely doable.
Great. Well, thanks for putting the time into that, Tegan. With that, let's kind of pivot a little bit to the two other documents that were put in there. There's the job description, which I don't think probably needs too much dialogue. If anything, we probably need to be working towards having more of those available for the other roles, to how we work through the rest of this. I do think that it's really interesting having the roles broken out, like in the role analysis, and maybe even considering like modifying the job description for administrator to be broken up in a similar way. Like right now, it's just bullet points of responsibilities that aren't necessarily linear to me. But if they were clustered in a way that at least we were internally keeping notes on what the
Yeah.
hourly allocation is, and as we get to the point where if we get to a point where we want to, for instance, like hire a road commissioner slash grant administrator that is a part-time or three-quarter time employee, like that those responsibilities are close enough to each other, and have some continuity to say, okay, well, this is what the expectation around compensation would be for those roles relative to the hours that would be committed to doing that.
Mhm.
Is anybody following me on that, or is that just about as clear as mud? Am I giving any?
I
direction?
think, I mean, I do understand where you're going, where you're trying to go there. I think there's, job descriptions are not taskless, right? So you just have to be careful not to overload the job description with detail.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I did have a point of clarification because it talks about the road commissioner as actually being a role, serves as the road commissioner. And then,
This was from a couple of years ago?
yeah,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
works with the treasurer. So it did seem to me that there were a couple of places that we might want to look at updating this.
Yeah.
Such that it is still flexible, recognize, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it would, I think at a minimum, it'd be worth, if we could reorganize the job description a little bit relative to those three roles. I think at a minimum,
Like
what we should.
Essential, and then may do this, may do that.
Yeah,
I don't know.
or even, now the language is kind of escaping me, but like with the road commissioner, I think the way that it's, the way that it's articulated in the current, job description is as if it is a core responsibility of
Yeah.
the town administrator. And
Yeah.
at the point of hiring the town administrator, that was the intent, but I
Yeah.
think we are at a point where maybe we could revisit that particular language, so that like the town administrator has, like oversees that or is responsible
Well,
for
I think it's.
administering that role.
Yeah, it's like oversight and or serves as, I mean, it doesn't have to be,
Exactly, right.
it doesn't have to be a lot of detail.
And same with the
simple.
treasurer position,
Same,
right?
exactly.
Right.
So I'll put it on my list to draft an update. Cause we know a lot more about the role now,
Right.
about someone in it for 2 years.
Right, thank you. So what do you need anything from us, Kari, to move next to the next?
Well, I was looking for any feedback you had on it and just that this approach is working for you. We
Yeah,
talked about what the next step here is. There's different components to it, right? There's the continuity planning, there's the, just defining the roles within the office, especially for the next hire. There's the compensation portion of it, so it's all related.
but does that, do we want to have another conversation? A smaller group, or? does
Yeah, why don't we
make
do
sense?
that?
Yeah, I think so. We kind of touched on that last week,
Okay.
and I think it would make sense to maybe kind of work through some of that in like a working group.
Okay,
As we start to kind of refine that. Going into this conversation tonight, I definitely wanted to note that, like, by my math, if you add up all of these things for town administrator, road commissioner, and treasurer, and even just crudely breaking that over, an assumed 50 weeks instead of the full 52, it was 70 hours a week. And I don't think that is an indication of some sort of miscalculation or gross error. I think that's probably a pretty realistic or conservative revenue.
2,000 a year?
2080 is a normal.
2,080 for the year.
2080 is a
I think you're
normal.
including
What
the
was-
totals in that.
I was including the totals, the subtotals,
Yeah.
because
I'm
right
back
now,
into 2080. I mean, I don't, you know,
Yeah.
that's around what I work.
Yeah.
I'm not working 70 hours a week for you. That's not happening.
I know.
1,100
I know.
plus 325 plus 655 is 2,080
Yeah.
annually.
okay,
And one thing, really important point about that is a different person with different demands on their time would put in different amounts of time.
that's right.
Like you could have a road commissioner putting in much more hours than that and being productive.
Right.
Right, yeah.
But the way things are arranged now, you know, with our crew, with me,
Yeah, this is sort of more, I'm sorry. This is more of a point in time.
yeah,
It's also an estimate. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, but it gives us a sense of,
It's illustrative.
yeah.
So Barbara did give us a pretty detailed list of tasks she performs in her 3 duties last spring. Do you all have that, or do you want that? It doesn't have hourly estimates at this point, but it does list pretty clearly all the many things that she has considered in her job.
And the job description that I did in 2022 is like 4 pages
Yeah,
long.
long.
Mhm.
Is it,
Is that, I'm sorry.
You're talking stuff.
I was curious how different it was from the essential tasks list that you created, in which,
As far as what is included on it?
yeah.
So her assistant clerk duties are very similar, but not quite the same, but it also includes what she does
The
as far
select
as assistant treasurer and what she does as far as select board, and those are
Okay.
things that I don't have on my desk.
Yeah, the two basic things that I do that she doesn't do is all the board committee and commissions and tax. Pay processing,
Right.
tax payment processing.
Yes.
And you have always done more of the town report.
Yeah, I'm telling you.
That's your baby.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
So to answer the question, yes, that is useful to the select board in figuring out this, and helping to figure out all this. Personnel, who does what, job description thing, yeah.
Yeah,
And it might also be just illuminating to see Barbara's perspective on
Absolutely.
what.
right.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yes.
What her pick does. You're also welcome to jump in. We can put words in your mouth.
So I also want to be sensitive to the fact that like I think I'm feeling like we're leaning on the staff pretty heavily to define their futures and their roles, but I think once we have critical mass of information, we're gonna need to schedule an executive session on either the next meeting or the following meeting to work through some select board dialogue, you know, without the staff, if that sounds appropriate. It might be a little early to think that that'll be the next meeting, but let's just see how soon we can kind of work through the kind of work group dialogues and the next steps for job descriptions that you guys work through, and try to get getting that on at the latest 2 meetings from now. All right. Does that sound like a good enough dialogue for that? There enough instruction? Great. Well, thank you everybody for the time that you're putting into that. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Sorry, I got sidetracked and thought there. So next up, we have the conversation about the mailing of the town reports. So we are having a little bit of dialogue on this during our agenda planning meeting, and there could be a notable savings if we make a change to how we're distributing our town reports. Right now, we have them printed and distributed to households. And so there's a fairly significant mailing fee associated with that. to make a change, though, we would have to have a vote, for town meeting. My anecdotal kind of position on this is like, whether we decide to mail them or not mail them, it seems like at the very least, we need to maybe put ourselves in a more flexible position around how we make a decision about distributing these. And right now, we can't make a change without bringing it as a warned item for folks to vote on at town meeting. There was some statutory homework I think that Tegan was gonna look into on what our obligations are for like equitable access to the town report, but also she and Barbara did some analysis on other communities who have made that switch. And there's definitely a notable savings in the mailing, but also in the printing, just because right now we're printing enough to have the extras as well as facilitate the household mailings. And so at the surface level, it seems like there's opportunity to roll back the amount of actual pieces that we're having printed, because not everybody is holding on to them as diligently as we are. I know. When Barbara said that she finds them in the garbage, I was like,
and I said recycling.
Recycling. Well, at least they're recycling. So go ahead.
I was just gonna. What do what's the best case scenario based on what you?
Well, so I think we have a couple options here. Another way, if we just set this discussion aside for just a quick second, another way to save money is to not make our town report so fulsome. We put a lot of pages in there doing the Conservation Commission report, the Trails Committee report, and the Central Vermont Solid Waste District Management report. We could cut back on a lot of the reports that are in there, but what I hear, people like to read them.
That seems more controversial than deciding that.
So then the other option, which is on the agenda, is to stop mailing them to all households. So Tegan knows the numbers, I think, by heart. So I'll leave it to her to quote them. But if we had a warning on town meeting that was not specific to shall Calais voters approve to stop mailing town reports, but just say gives the select board the option on how to distribute town reports. What we were thinking and what seems to be successful in other towns is that if it goes to the voters and if they approve, to let us change the process. That the first year would probably, which would be a year away from now, would be probably to print as many, even if you're not gonna mail them, still print them at the quantity that we have or close to it, and make them available all around town, all the stores, all the post offices, the Maple Corner Community Center, Adamant Community Club, the East Calais Rec Club, the Town Hall, all these different public places have the stash available. You can pick it up anywhere in town. Of course, the digital copy would be on the website. And so until we find out just how many people really stop and pick one up and how quickly we go through them, we would have enough the first year to make sure that there was plenty and it didn't just run out and then people got mad. But we'd see how many did get used. And then the next year, calculate how many you could cut it back by the following year. So it would be like a 2 or 3 probably year transition time of.
Nice sweet spot.
Yeah, to see how many you would actually.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Statutorily, there are other things we would need to do to make sure that everyone was exposed to the town meeting warning and to the actual audit, the budgetary, because those are the things that people are legally required to see in town. Some people.
Unless town meeting, we say you get a postcard instead or something.
No, there's certain things that we have to either put in the newspaper or mail to everybody. Like it's just been newspaper and posted in various places around town. It just becomes a little more complicated. It's not impossible. One town I found that I really liked this idea, they have someone who prints sort of a cheap newsprint version of the budget and the warning and send that to everybody. And they do it through a house that does the media mail, and they said that that doesn't cost them much. That's also a really small town though, so I don't know how the numbers match out. But so there are other ways to do it, but there are things we would have to, it wouldn't be entirely without cost. There are other things we would have to do that would add up to hundreds of dollars probably.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I understand. Because you're saying the statute requires us to send the auditor's report and the warning, right?
Or to make them available. I believe there are ways that we could post them in the newspaper and around town.
Right, because the language in this memo that came from Garrett at VLCT would let us mail a postcard instead of mailing or otherwise distributing the report. So
I haven't seen the postcard, but that's entirely possible. Garrett is an attorney and I'm not, so he might know.
So it's only okay if the voters approve it at town meeting.
Yeah, we can't take any steps until they approve it anyway.
Right.
So it wouldn't be till the next year that we would do the next change. And then Barbara talked about how we'd have to figure out whether, would we mail them if people requested them? Would we, what would we do for people who live in Connecticut or who don't leave their house? Or, how could you sign up ahead of time to have one mailed to you? That sounds like a total nuisance. So there's a lot of.
So it costs
It's
$1 to mail each one,
Yeah.
so my vote would be, you're not gonna mail any, that's just no longer an option.
She
But
says
if-
it's the person who's not gonna be.
But if somebody really wants one, I would say they would have to pay for the postage, they would have to pay the town office for the postage.
Or I would drive it to them. I mean, how many people are we?
That's it, I'm sure,
Like-
between the town office staff, at least currently, we live in like 3 different corners of town, we could get it to almost anybody, or drop in one of the stores where people could, like, there's so many ways this could work.
So I think it'd be helpful if we have firmer numbers, I guess, on like what it costs now, what it would cost to, what's it gonna cost to print them, in the volume, but not mail them, so what's the.
Did you not have the 2 separate, Ari? In your memo, you asked me about the 2 separate numbers.
Yeah, I thought all the numbers were in your memo.
But-
It's just a one number, there's like, 3,600 to print and mail last year's.
Give me a minute and I can find that.
So you already know this, but like, it's not once you have the print set up, like printing 500 versus 800 isn't really a big price difference, likely.
Probably not,
It's
we
much
haven't
more the
gotten
postage,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the number of pages, as you're suggesting.
Right, the number of pages.
That's the other
But
piece
we're consistent, right around 120 to 125 pages for each of the last several years.
Mhm.
Don't.
The number of pages and postage are the things I would look at more so than the number that are printed.
Right.
Unless we're just gonna get away from that altogether and only.
But but we're also gonna have a cost associated with like having to mail something, whether it's a postcard or, newsprint
Yeah.
budget, so we're gonna need to know what the number is on that.
Postage is a pretty small percentage. I don't have the number broken out from last year, but from the year before. The town report itself was about 2,800 and postage was about 500.
Really?
And I guess so maybe this is,
Media mail or something, I don't know.
this isn't even so much of a conversation about budget as it is like just the waste of printing things
Yes,
that
that is
people
also-
are
yeah, that's
discarding.
fair.
So, I mean, I think being prepared to have some language in a proposal, and just have some representation
Absolutely.
on the floor to say like, listen,
We're looking at what's.
we wanna look at what's practical, certainly everybody who is at town meeting is going to have kind of a bias towards like having the one in their hands that was sent to them, right? But I think it's gonna be important to note that there's an observation of like how much of these end up getting wasted, and we'd be doing a better job at maybe changing it, and hopefully that is justification enough to make an affirmative vote to give us a little more flexibility at looking at distributing them in a more efficient way and less wasteful way, I guess.
I was surprised at how many towns said we stopped. Although a few of them learned It seems one in the hard way that you needed to have a vote to stop. But we got a lot of feedback from a lot of different towns who are all doing it in different ways and have figured out the way that works best for their constituents.
Well, thanks for doing that homework, I guess. I think we should probably be moving in the direction of bringing it up for a floor vote, and which I think is clear enough for me. And as we look at the town warning, I guess we'll refine that any further. And assign it to somebody to take the fodder on town meeting. Should it be very controversial?
I feel like it, you know, it will definitely generate energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it could also lead to a conversation about whether we have town meeting at all. So we want to, seriously, I feel like it could immediately go, people could jump to that, so. We'll,
Fortunately, everyone there will be there, and so maybe they'll be biased.
yeah.
I mean, I'm all for a conversation because I don't have strong feelings either way. I think if we keep mailing it to everyone, that's great. And if people decide, no, it's wasteful and this is a much better way to do it, that's also great.
Can we ask, is there something we can ask?
What do you mean?
I'm just thinking about
like doing a survey or something.
oh God, no, I don't really want to do something formal, but I just think like.
There was a significant survey in Donna's time. I have some of the paperwork that that was about town meeting. It was about having it here versus the school. It was about having a meeting at all. It was about moving the day, like back when a lot of towns started.
Not about the book.
Not about the report.
If you could separate yourselves from being select board members.
Yeah.
Just residents of town, how would you feel if the town report no longer shows up in your mailbox?
It's just one more way in which life is going downhill.
Thankfully for me, that downhill is right past the office, so I'll just pick it up there.
I don't have any feelings about whether it's in my mailbox at all.
Because you would be sure to pick it up somewhere.
I would.
That's right.
Yeah, I don't have any feelings about that.
That's how I feel about the phone book. It shows up at the post office every year and I'm like, phone book time, and I snag it. Great. It's an exciting time.
So the tech person.
The hard. So-called phone. We have definitely tracked down people's phone numbers in that phone book that we haven't been able to find.
And maybe that's, maybe that's just the way to frame it. It's just like, listen, we're not posing any particular change other than we want to give ourselves some more flexibility should, depending on how that feedback goes. And, we're not talking about structurally changing it or deleting it, and we're still gonna have it, printed.
Anything that you want to say. Either way. Right.
Very interested in still making it accessible, but are people open enough to allowing us to make some changes should we want to
Feel like
or feel like it? And if they say no, they can vote it down and whatever, that'll be the end of the conversation. So that's fine. That's part of the process.
Is there any limiting people's reports to like word count or?
Barbara usually requests a limited word count. I don't know how many people.
Well, and quite frankly, Tegan and I go through, we edit at will. Did you guys know that?
Well, that's how you get
Most
it.
of it's for typos and.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Moving on to reports. Tegan, do you have any updates on anything?
I believe you were in on this email, but the WCUSD school board is gonna ask towns to send ballots to everybody for the town meeting budget vote again this year. They have very strong feelings about that, evidence from David Delfort's article in the Times Argus. I don't know yet if they are gonna request a vote in January about school closing, because the school board doesn't know yet, but that is still very much a possibility that I'm anticipating. And I'm hoping Barbara doesn't abandon me early if we have one more election thrown in the bag before we get to town meeting. So that's on my radar, is being prepared for that. The plaque for Eva, I assigned Barbara we were gonna put up a plaque for you, and then we had to figure out where to put it, and then we picked a spot, but we really need to move some other things around first, and then it sort of fell by the wayside. So now Barbara is working on cleaning up that spot on the wall, and we're gonna put, so we have finally figured out the size plaque to order for Eva, and I just, in my email today, got some of the mock-ups from the person that's gonna be making the plaque, so I need to take a look at those tomorrow, and we are making progress on having our little Eva spot on the wall, which I'm excited about, because.
And her house just closed.
And her house is sold,
Mm.
yeah. Other than that, I was working on this spreadsheet and learning more of the finance processes from Kari. We did a session last week. We're gonna do another session on Wednesday, just walking me through what he does and why he does it and why we need to do it as a town. And where are the how-to documents stashed away in his desk so that I know where to find things, which very helpful to have. I got an InDesign subscription for the town, so I could start playing around with the town report and how that works, since I won't be the one doing the design. My gracious husband, who has taught InDesign to journalism students for many years, has agreed to help me out and teach me some tips and tricks, so I'm very excited that he's offered to do that at no cost to the town. Just because I wanna start working on that now, before time gets pinched, especially if there is another election in January, which is, starting to do the basics of that, updating things I can update right now, like, oh, this person is no longer on my committee, this person is, this is the phone number, that, just getting the ropes by doing the basics now. So that is what I have been working on. Okay, I think that's about it. Barbara, anything else you can think of from the office?
Thank you. Financial report was, next up and was posted to the shared drive. Did everybody have an opportunity to read through the financial report? Were there any questions about that specifically? Turn it over to Karen and note anything in particular. I mean, it was also pretty straightforward.
Yeah, we're 4 months in with this report and revenues are on track. General government expenses are fine. We're a little high in areas of highway as it seems to go. I mean, nothing too concerning. And we have a really high fund balance at the moment as of this October 31st, but that'll all change this month as we take in the last of the tax revenue, and then we're gonna pay out another big payment to the school, because we're collecting their taxes, basically. That's why things are so high. And then, and I just want to mention that the way, and I think Rick mentioned this, but the way we handle the grants, the highway grants, we budget just the match.
Right.
So we have a much larger expenditure than that, and we have reimbursement. So it just kind of throws off.
Yeah, I was noticing that because of, on the report, I guess it looked like, for the Kent Hill, there's like, it shows up as a calculation of like a 500% overage because we're only budgeting for the match part. And do they have a recommendation on how we should?
I want to ask Rick about that. I didn't bring it up tonight, but
Are we outliers on doing it that way?
I really don't know.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem proper.
I guess Katie would have insight into that one too. She's such a budget queen.
Yeah. Yeah, so I
Katie,
don't want to do better with that if possible. I know what he said that oftentimes you don't know what grant you're getting. That was true for like County Road. We didn't know the paving grant, but we did know the Kent Hill. So there might be some cases where we could budget that properly.
The other item that I think would be helpful in kind of refining this is like I was thinking about like the overages in the highway department for the material that, we're under for gravel, but over for the sand and a couple of other things. So I wonder if there's an efficient way that's not administratively like burdensome to have like a forecasted expended, like what's the forecasted amount for the balance of the fiscal year, like for like the gravel, for instance, which was like I can't remember, but it's that like 40% or something is pretty significantly under, but like, are we going to realize that because the gravel is impacted more seasonally than like the drainage stone.
Yeah,
Would that be helpful to
the
anybody
accounting
else to
system
see
wouldn't
that?
do it on its own, but I imagine I can download a report and then add that as a column and fill it in. It'd be more accurate when we get into the second half of the year. For sure.
Right.
I mean, it's all, much of that's weather dependent from here on out.
From an oversight perspective, it seems like that's the information that would empower the select board to have more actionable input
Yeah.
on
Do we need to
like,
just, like,
hey,
play it in?
or can we, I would like to see, this particular line item reined in a
Yeah.
particular amount if we can. Or better line of sight on whether or not there's gonna be
Year-end projection.
year-end overage or something else.
I'll look into it.
Thank you. Other town admin update?
Yeah, so it's been pretty busy, but one thing, a couple things I wanted to inform you. So we were able to change plow systems. Remember that decision last time? So that was good news. What was bad news as we were in the process of taking ownership is that there was not an extended warranty built into the purchase of that vehicle, our practice is to get a 7-year extended warranty. Covers almost everything. And that's what we plan on, and I take it that the town has done well with that practice. I'm getting that priced out and I'll bring in a recommendation, because I think we should do that. I mean, it's, how flimsy as some of these trucks are these days. I think it's just really in our interest to protect that investment. So there is that, and, I wanted to thank Barbara for all her work in her final tax season. She processed almost every single payment that we received. It's a lot, she does it really accurately.
And with a smile.
And with good grace.
I've actually never made a mistake.
And I wanted to mention 2 sort of optional meetings, the planning commission, I don't know if you saw my notes, I went to their meeting.
Yeah.
So they're planning, they're getting to the end of their process to re-up the town plan. And they're going to invite the public, and specifically the select board and the conservation commission, to their next meeting on the 2nd. And they're gonna have draft goals, and take input. And I made sure to ask, will the select board have another chance to comment before you bring them your final draft? And Jared said yes. But this seemed like, this is designed to please give us your input. And then the East Montpelier Fire Department interlocal meeting is on the 11th. And if you're only gonna go to one fire department meeting, that's the one. Because the budget is on the table, and plus there's new leadership.
Yeah.
Do you need a quorum at that time? I'm not able to be there.
If there's a quorum, we'll warn it. Or we might warn it anyway.
I think we might just warn, I think we generally just warn it by default, and then that covers everybody's bases. There isn't likely going to be any like business conducted other than a review of their budget. They did commit to trying to share with us a preliminary budget prior to that, which is great. That's a step forward from and Kari and I, as I mentioned before, met with them a little more informally last week, and did also touch on kind of the budgeting process a little bit to provide some feedback on that for the new leadership. And they were very open to looking at modifying their budgeting process a little bit so that we have a little more advanced line of sight on their annual budgeting process. So I think that there's going to be some pretty good, meaningful dialogue at that meeting. So anybody who can attend, I think that would be.
When is that?
Great. That's the 11th. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The 11th, it's a Thursday at like 7 PM, and Zoom is an option. I think they'll have their audit and they'll have statistics and.
I'm sorry about it, but I haven't.
That's okay.
No, it's okay.
We'll take notes. Yeah, so that was that.
All right.
Right. So the next agenda item is the possible executive session or likely executive session to review the labor contract and get an update on negotiations with the possible action following that to be the approval of the highway department labor contract. So that being said, happy to dismiss everyone except for Kari and select board members. And we'll take notes on our entering and exiting of executive session.
Who's gonna do the motion to enter executive session?
Yeah, who's gonna do the motion? I would like.
Move to, enter executive session under, oh, sorry, you have to do it under the whole whoozy.
Well, it's okay. You were doing great.
I forgot the language. Under one VSA 3131B, labor relations agreements with employees.
Second.
Everybody in favor?
Aye. Why should you have all the fun?
You want that, Jeff?
My least favorite one.
Can
Can we designate it?
Sorry, I'll see you in the morning.
Okay, see you in the morning. I'll be there.
Thank you.
Thank you.